Hi, you're watching Shredheads. In this video, we're analyzing the legendary Perpetual Burn by none other than Jason Becker. We're going to go on a journey beyond the tab to see what we can learn from this amazing arpeggio technique. So really, these arpeggios are truly legendary. They have such a unique sound, and unfortunately, they've been so shrouded in mystery for so long. So many of us have wondered, how can I sound like this? So if you're one of those people, you may well have gone on the internet and looked for tablature. Tabs really can only get us so far. Unfortunately, we're just taking somebody else's word for what someone played on a record, and in many cases, it's confusing, hard to understand, difficult to play, and we leave ourselves wondering if we can trust what we're seeing. Your next option may be to look for online covers. The difficulty with this piece, though, is that just about everybody has a different way to play it, and you're left wondering just who exactly is playing it correctly, or what is the right way to play it. Unfortunately, covers don't really have the answer for us. Now we're left to rely on just about our one and only option, which is to try and learn this by ear. Unfortunately, to try and learn this by ear at full speed would be far too difficult. It's far too fast. But thankfully, we do have a good, valuable resource at our disposal: YouTube. So if you're watching this video on YouTube, you'll find down at the bottom right, we have settings for our playback speed. YouTube is an excellent resource for slowing down videos. You can click the little settings icon and click the playback speed to play it at half speed, even quarter speed. This is really useful for learning some of those really fast, really difficult solos. YouTube even pitch corrects the pitch so that when it's slowed down, it's at the same pitch that you're already used to. So with this resource at my disposal, I went ahead and learn this by ear, slowing it down. And what you're about to hear is my take on the left channel and Jason Becker's original album take on the right channel. Then we're going to slow that down to half speed and look at the similarities and differences between my take and Jason's, and see just how close I got to playing the right pitches and rhythms. So after hearing that, you might be wondering, am I right? Am I the definitive version of what's played? Well, the truth is, unfortunately, these arpeggios are really difficult to hear and really difficult to transcribe accurately. Unfortunately, with this piece, it's just so difficult to hear that really there will never be a definitive version of what was played and what we can learn from, like in a simple tablature form. What I can do, though, is I can offer you my perspective on how I learned this and add to the discussion of what was being played, so we can get at least a good understanding of how to play it, the techniques, and so forth. I also want to present to you my method so that you can appreciate learning by ear. With all of this, we can hopefully move beyond the tab and look at the techniques that were used and how we can implement that in our own playing. So before we analyze the specifics of what I played, I just want to offer a little bit of context about what key we're in. So in this instance, Jason Becker is using something a little fancy called Phrygian dominant. And if you know neoclassical style playing, you know that this is a common trope, and it really adds a cool dynamic to the sound. So we're in E Phrygian dominant, and I'm not going to go over what Phrygian dominant is, but I will offer you the chords, and from that you can see the context of the scale that we're in. So we start with an E power chord, move to F natural, then G sharp, back to F. Then Jason resolves this mode that we're in to A harmonic minor, so that's the key of the rest of the piece after the intro. So let's analyze these arpeggios, shall we? So right off the bat, you'll notice in some tablatures they have written this note as the first note. Already, I disagree with that. I think what Jason played on the record was really this note pulling off to this note. Then Jason descends this arpeggio. Now, there are many ways to play these exact notes. You might consider and ponder your options. So the first one would be, in fact, this. Or we could have this pulling off, or we could have something like this where we bar. Just with that, we learn to appreciate the various options that we have and to think about what Jason might have played and how he's obtaining the sound that he's getting. As I transcribe this, I keep in the back of my mind that Jason is really a clever guitarist and knows about how to play various notes on different strings and how to formulate his arpeggios to best fit his finger. I'm keeping in the back of my mind all these various options and considering that Jason could play any one of these at any given time. For this particular one, I think he's going right down the strings. Then we have these notes. I have it notated this way because I hear a legato line between those notes. My version of playing this brings up an important point. I think Jason is using a considerable amount of legato in his arpeggios. So rather than playing a traditional arpeggio up and down, such as this, so Jason is using legato in the middle of his arpeggios to flesh them out even more and give them a more exotic sound, really out of this world sound that's giving it that unique character that we love from these arpeggios. Now, where you have this legato notated precisely doesn't matter so much as just putting it in there to give it that sound. So for my version personally, I have that written between these two notes. And then arriving back at the top of our arpeggio where we're going to descend again. So altogether, that sounds like this. Now from there, we get a more typical pentatonic type of shape that again gives it a really neat sound because you hardly hear anybody sweep a pentatonic pattern, but Jason does it. So here's what we have. Now again, the specifics of how you notate this can change, but the way I have it is simply you can bar across this pentatonic pattern, and it makes for a pretty difficult arpeggio, but it is pretty neat sounding, so I like it. And then we descend back down. From there, we get another similar pattern using legato again. So for this arpeggio, I have legato written in 3 different parts. From here to here, from this note to this note, and as we ascend back up this arpeggio, from there to there, and then we reach our high note, and again we travel back down the arpeggio using that same sequence and that same legato in the arpeggio. So for this final run down the arpeggio, I think Jason then chooses to descend like a normal arpeggio, just straight down the notes across the strings. With those notes, you could play it this way. But again, I think Jason has these many options at his disposal and chooses to play the ones that best suit his sound. Now these next arpeggios to me were the most difficult to transcribe. Unfortunately, this part is the hardest to hear. You're getting some like distortion and perhaps it's just played sort of sloppy, so it's difficult to hear. But I have transcribed just pretty much a normal arpeggio pattern, which again, Jason doesn't always have to play with legato. He can also play a regular arpeggio pattern. This next part is kind of a return to our previous part, but with just some slight changes to the notes to make this arpeggio unique. So for this final run, I think Jason is playing something really unique here. This short little snippet of the intro really gave me a lot of trouble to transcribe because the notes are so unique. Here are the notes that I'm hearing. It sounds as though he's descending sort of an arpeggio, which you could play like that. However, what I hear is a little bit of legato infused into the sound, and so I came up with something like this, which is a really unique pattern. Now, Even if this wasn't played on the record, it actually revealed to me an interesting way that you can play arpeggios. So for this, we have 2 legato lines that form like an arpeggio. However, they're played across strings that are a string apart from one another. However, they can still be played like a fast arpeggio. The way you do this is you play down on the one string, and as you're hammering on to this next string, to this next note, you use that time to travel your pick onto the next strings. And in fact, you can actually just rake across this string, those string that's in the way, and use that time to get to the next strings and finish your legato line and your arpeggio. Like that. Then Jason finishes off with the typical techniques that we've seen from him. So altogether, we've learned a lot about Jason's technique, about the way that he fleshes out his really unique arpeggios. He's a really clever player that likes to experiment with new sounds, almost in a childish manner, but just like in this wonderful exploring new ideas, exploring new sounds, just always trying to find something interesting and creative like a child would. So in the process of researching for this video, I actually found that Jason himself did an article for a guitar magazine where he discusses how people play these arpeggios and how they have difficulty transcribing them. And so he wanted to give his take on what he played to clear up any mystery. So like myself, you might have been thinking, wow, this is great. We finally have a take from the horse's mouth. We finally have Jason explaining what he himself played on the record. Now, Jason's transcription offers some great insights into his playing. In fact, we were right that he was using legato in his playing. However, if we're just trying to answer the question of what notes were played on the record, I think we come upon some problems. I noticed some differences between what I'm hearing when I slow down the record and what Jason has transcribed. So really, if we want to answer the question of what specifically was played on the record, unfortunately, perhaps we may never have a definitive answer. Even if we're hearing it from Jason himself, we're taking his word for something that he played over 30 years ago, and something that he admitted himself that when he played it on the record, it wasn't really clean. If we're just trying to answer the question of what was played on the record, really we have to look at our method here. And as you saw for yourself, we took upon the method of slowing down what was on the record and discerning for ourselves the notes that were played. We can look at the notes on Jason's transcription and compare them to what we hear on the record. And unfortunately, there are just some things that I do not hear on the record. This note in particular is giving me the most trouble. I just don't hear it. So with all of that in mind, I'm just presenting to you what I hear on the record and how I play it. Let's not get too hung up on what exactly the notes were that were played on the record. Really, we've learned a lot from just analyzing the techniques that were played and how we can apply that to our own playing. Hopefully we've grown to appreciate how we can learn things by ear, by slowing them down and thinking beyond just what we could see in tablature. And hopefully we've added to the discussion of what was played on the record or what wasn't played on the record, so that when people look this stuff up online to try and learn it, that they have a source that they can trust. So I thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been an informative journey for you and that you've picked something up from it. If you did, it would be greatly appreciated if you would like and subscribe to our channel. We make videos like this on a weekly basis, and we hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.